إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. First and foremost, we start with the best of greetings, the greeting of Islam, the greeting of the people of Jannah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just to correct the brother's point about the intentions and being here in a gathering, in the best of gatherings, the Prophet ﷺ spoke about a group of people. They said that Allah Azza wa Jal has angels that are walking around in the streets. They're finding circles of knowledge or circles of remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal. And then once they find the circle, they will pile, angels will gather and they will gather on top of the circle. And there will be angels gathering on top of one another until it reaches the heavens. And then Allah Azza wa Jal will ask, He'll say, where have you come from? They say, we've come from gathering from a group of people that worship you. And then He said, what do they want? He said, they said, they praise you, they yuhallilunak, say la ilaha illallah, they do hamd, they thank Allah Azza wa Jal, and they show gratitude to Allah Azza wa Jal. And then He said, what do they want? What are they asking for? He said, Jannah. And they said, but they've never seen my Jannah. And He asks, Allah Azza wa Jal asks, have they seen my Jannah? They say no. Then He says, what about if they have seen my Jannah? And then He asks, what do they seek refuge from? And then they say, the hellfire. Allah Azza wa Jal asks, He says, have they seen the hellfire? They say no. And then Allah Azza wa Jal says, and then they tell Allah Azza wa Jal, and they seek your mercy. And then He goes, tell them that I've forgiven all of them, all of their sins. And they say, oh Allah, there's one of them, one of these people that attended, he was just passing by, he had something else, he just sat down. He wasn't part of the group that was seeking Allah Azza wa Jal's mercy. He wasn't part of the group that was there to remember Allah Azza wa Jal. He just so happened to be passing by. And then Allah Azza wa Jal says, forgive him as well, I've forgiven him as well. Verily it's a group gathering in which no one regrets spending time in. If you don't enjoy the story, if you don't enjoy the talk, if you don't enjoy the lecture, whatever it may be, if you don't feel like you've benefited, whoever the speaker may be, at the end of the day, that if you come here with a sincere intention, you could leave with not only the food, but you could leave with the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal and the forgiveness, and ask Allah Azza wa Jal to grant us all of that. Now, stories in the Quran. You know, some of the companions and some of the people of the Salaf used to say that the Quran is split into 3 parts. One is the Tawheed of Allah Azza wa Jal, the monotheism, witnessing that Allah Azza wa Jal is one. The second part being the legislative part of the Quran, so commandments, what Allah Azza wa Jal wants from us, things like the dain and marriage, and how all of these affairs are done, the daily affairs of the people, how they're conducted. And the last part is stories. Why does Allah Azza wa Jal focus heavily on stories? Now you've had 1 semester from stories, I'm expecting some answers. Why does Allah Azza wa Jal focus heavily on stories in the Quran? So we can relate. Can I have some more answers? So you can derive qawa'id from them. Okay. What more? Dawood, what do you say? You can speak up. Do you have anything else? Different kinds of emotions. The morals of the story. Okay. We have like a number of answers, and I think just understanding why Allah Azza wa Jal focuses on stories will take us the whole lesson, but I'm not going to focus on it too heavily. It's just, you look at the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal says the first thing is لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ عِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. In the stories of the people that came before, nations that were perished before, is lessons for people that want to take heed. So if you as an individual want to hear about dealing justly or in your affairs, and you listen to the story of the people of Shu'aib, how they used to cheat, how they used to lie in business, and then you as an individual, as a Muslim, come and set up a business and start cheating, and then you ask, where's the barakah in my business? Or you go on and listen to the story of the people of Lut and so on and so forth, and then you ask Allah Azza wa Jal, and you genuinely look at this story and you think, okay, Allah Azza wa Jal shows us a certain way of living and shows us the consequences of a certain way of living. And then for you as a Muslim, you make your choice from there on. And you look also at the stories, and then Allah Azza wa Jal, the second thing is a challenge in it, because now Allah Azza wa Jal sends Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when he moved to Medina especially, it was majority people of the book, Christians and Jews. And these Christians and Jews had a huge number of stories in their books, so they knew about some of these stories. And in the retreat for the people that were there, we spoke about the people of the cave. They challenged the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell us the story of the people of the cave, tell us the story of Dhul Qarnayn. They would go to him and tell us this and this, if you knew about this. How would the Prophet ﷺ know about stories that happened in an atmosphere that wasn't surrounding his? So the people of Quraysh had their own stories, but it was stories of the Arabs. These stories were of people of Egypt, stories of people of Sham. It wasn't something that was relatable to Muhammad ﷺ. It wasn't something that he grew up knowing. So for him to bring these stories and bring the best version of them, it was a challenge for the people of Bani Israel. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla in the Quran puts these stories mainly as a lesson for anyone that comes on to read it. And then at the same time, these stories were sent at a time that the Prophet ﷺ and the companions were prosecuted. So now we look at the Prophet ﷺ, this same story that we're going to talk about today. The Prophet ﷺ mentions it in a hadith to a companion by the name of Khabbab ibn al-Arath. Khabbab ibn al-Arath was a companion that believed in the Prophet ﷺ early on, and he was one of the poorer companions. So in Mecca, the poorer companions used to be punished. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, until when? How long are we going to be punished for? When is Allah Azza wa Jal going to help us? And then he said to him, oh Khabbab, he said to him, from the nations that came before you, there used to be a nation that a man would be brought forth and a soul would be put on the top of his head, and his body would be sewn into two halves, and he wouldn't turn back on the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal at the slightest. His body would be split into half, and he wouldn't turn back to the Prophet. He wouldn't turn back from the religion, from the call of Allah Azza wa Jal. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used these stories to say, oh Khabbab, our affair may be bad, but there were people that came before us that faced it much worse. And then he said to him that Allah Azza wa Jal will eventually help this religion until a man would walk from Sana'a to Hadramaut. He fears nothing other than Allah Azza wa Jal and the wolf on the wolves. But you guys are hasty. You're spending 10, 13 years in Mecca and you're expecting Allah Azza wa Jal to help you already. You look at the nations that came before you, and some of them spent decades before the help of Allah Azza wa Jal came. Nuh alayhi salam, 950 years. So he said to me, you guys are hasty. However, Allah Azza wa Jal's Nasr will eventually come. And then the last thing is, obviously the last lesson you look at it is that eventually, regardless of how long it takes, Allah Azza wa Jal will support and will help all of his messengers, all of his prophets, and all of the believers. Now this story is known as the boy and the king, the boy, the monk, and the sorcerer or the magician, the people of the trench, the people of the ditch, is known by multiple names. In the Quran, only the latter part of the story, so the ending of the story, is mentioned, where a group of people are being thrown into a ditch, people are being thrown into a trench. But when you go back to the start of the story, it's mentioned in multiple books of hadith that Prophet ﷺ narrated to his companions as he was sat and he was speaking to him. And the story is narrated by a companion by the name of Suhaib al-Rumi. He says there used to be a king, and this king had a magician, a sorcerer that was close to him. And this sorcerer, over time, eventually of him serving the king, he felt that his time was up and he's grown in age, and that eventually he won't be able to serve the king as good as he can. So he asked the king, he said to him, I've grown, I've become old, send me a boy that I can train, so that when I die, the magic, whatever I'm serving you with, can live on. And this shows that, subhanAllah, like whatever happens, you look at Fir'aun, you look at these people, all of these tyrants across time, none of them have managed to do it alone. You look at Fir'aun, he relied on people around him. Haman, he relied on his soldiers. You look at this king, he relies on the sorcerer. And this sorcerer isn't someone that's been doing it because he's forced. He's doing it because he wants to see the king win. And even when he feels like I'm going to die and the magic will die and the king won't benefit, he goes out of his way to start training someone just so he is able to support the king and support Batil batil. And just like you find people that strive for this religion, you find people that make the primary calling for something other than Allah Azza wa Jal. You find people that spend all of their time, and they're mostly known as ex-Muslims, but now you look at this magician, and he goes out of his way to start training this young boy. And the king picks out someone, and he brings him to him, and he says, this is one of the smartest people that we have, so start training him. He starts training him, he starts teaching him the basics of magic, he starts passing on whatever he's gathered from experiences. Then over time, the boy is learning, the boy is absorbing, and he's coming to the palace, he's coming to the king in the morning, learning from the magician, and then going back to his family. Eventually, on his route, he found a monk. This monk was on his own, secluded, worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal. And over time, you see someone, and you're living in a village, and you're walking past, and you see someone on their own. Eventually, you would wonder what the story is. So he approached him, and he found out from him what his story is. And this monk said to him, I worship Allah Azza wa Jal, I worship our Lord. He goes to him, our Lord is the king. He said, no, it's not. It's Allah Azza wa Jal. He shows him the basics of Islam. And the boy is interested. So over time, his routine becomes that once he's going to the sorcerer or the magician, he would stop by the monk. And once he's heading back, he would stop by the monk before he goes home. And then over time, the magician noticed that he's coming later, and his family noticed that he's coming later. So he started getting beaten up at home when he comes late, and he started getting beaten by the magician when he comes late. So he came to the righteous man, to the monk, and he said to him, look, I'm being beat wherever I go, so help me out. What do you think is the best thing I should do? So the monk said to him that if you go to the magician and he's not happy with the time you've arrived, say my family have delayed me. And if you go to your family, just blame it on the magician, because he has stayed, he was with the magician, and he was with his family, so he's not lying saying I was with my family, but he's missing out the part where he spent some time with the monk learning his religion. And that way it saved him having to face sort of trouble at home and trouble when he gets to work, if we want to call it that, or training. Over time, it started conflicting between him. He's learning something that we know is one of the nullifiers of religion, one of the 10 things that takes you out of the fold of Islam, and at the same time, he's learning the practice of Islam. He's learning about monotheism. He's learning about Allah Azza wa Jal. When he goes to a palace, he's being told the king is your Lord, and everything you should do is to serve the king. When he goes to the monk says to him, Allah Azza wa Jal is your Lord, and he's the only one. So he came to a cross path, he came to a crossroad, he came to a point of his life where he needs to make a decision. He needs to feel like, I don't know which one's true. And people sometimes often feel that maybe not about religion or who your Lord is, but you feel sometimes maybe my religion isn't meant like for me. And people always at this at this stage in life, you'll hit a point where you start doubting certain aspects of certain teachings that your parents have taught you. It may not be you that's doubting, it may be a friend, it may be someone that you know that has them elements of doubt in the religion, but it's something no doubt happens to majority of people that go through this age. So his way of sorting out this conflict is he saw an opportunity. Once he was walking and he found a beast on the way, and some narrations say it was a lion. He picked up a stone and he said, oh Allah, if you are the true Lord and the monk is on the truth, then make this stone a means for this lion to die. And he started with, if the monk is on the truth, because he himself, his fitrah, led him to feel like Allah Azza wa Jal and monotheism is the true religion. So he threw this stone and the beast died. He came back to his teacher, he came to the monk and he said to him, look, what happened was I was walking today and I saw a beast, so I picked up a stone and I threw it, and the beast died. And I called upon Allah Azza wa Jal before I did so. So now the monk said to him, look, listen, today you have reached a stage where you are better than me. You are better than me because you have publicly said it in front of people, oh Allah, if you are the true Lord, then make the stones a means for this beast to be killed. Publicly, you stated that you believe in Allah Azza wa Jal, while the monk himself wasn't out there publicly calling to Allah Azza wa Jal. So he said to him, today you are better than me, and you're going to be tested. So when you are tested, don't mention my name. Do me a favor, don't mention my name. You are going to be tested, and don't mention my name. How did the monk know he was going to be tested? it's the normal aspect of anyone that calls to Allah Azza wa Jal, is that at a certain point they will be tested. When the Prophet ﷺ went to Waraq ibn Nawfal, even though Waraq ibn Nawfal wasn't a prophet, he was just someone that believed in Christianity and believed in monotheism on the time of the Prophet ﷺ, or before the Prophet ﷺ, pre-Islam. He went to the Prophet ﷺ and he said to him, the Prophet ﷺ said to him, after his wife Khadija took him there, he said to him, I've seen Jibreel, and then he said to him, this is An-Namus Al-Akbar. He said to him, you're going to be tested, and I wish I could support you when your people would expel you out of Mecca. This is 14 years before the Prophet ﷺ was sent out of Mecca. How did Waraqa know? How did this monk know? It's the common denominator that faced all of the prophets before them. You look at Musa alayhi salam, he was thrown out of his land. You look at Nuh alayhi salam, he had to flee his land on a boat. You look at all of these prophets and messengers, eventually they go through the same challenge, eventually they go through the same test where they have to sacrifice something, whether it's where they're living, whether it's their families or certain family members, for the sake of this religion. And Muhammad was no different, and just like all of these messengers were tested, anyone that calls to Allah Azza wa Jal will be tested. So the boy, he somewhat rose to fame. He killed the beast, he helped the people, and it became a normal thing for people to come to him and be like, look, I have leprosy, cure me, I'm blind, cure me, I'm facing this, cure me. And eventually, once he was curing people and he was helping people get cured through Allah Azza wa Jal, an advisor of the king heard about him, and this advisor of the king was blind. So he came to him and he said, look, he bought some gifts with him, he bought some money. He said, look, you may have seen me around the palace, this is all for you if you cure me. He said, I can't cure you. It's Allah Azza wa Jal that cures, and it's Allah Azza wa Jal that gives curance. What I can do is call Allah Azza wa Jal for you, or make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal for you, so that you can be cured. But you have to make that dua with me. I can't make dua for you if you don't believe in Allah Azza wa Jal. So the advisor of the king said, look, I'm willing to give you all of this if it means believing in Allah Azza wa Jal. If he's going to cure me, then so be it. He believed in Allah Azza wa Jal, and he made dua to him, and his eyesight returned to him. This boy went on his way, and the next day the advisor of the king came to the palace, and the king could see that his eyesight is back. He asked him, he said, who gave you your eyesight back? He said, my Lord. He said, do you have a Lord other than me? And this is the same thing that Musa alayhi salam was asked. When he first went to Fir'aun, and Fir'aun asked people, he said, Ya ayyuhal mala'u ma alimtu lakum min ilahin ghayri. I do not know any other Lord for you except me. Out of confusion that he genuinely believes, he's reached a point where he believes there's no Lord other than him. That you actually think that there's a Lord other than me, someone else other than me gave you your eyesight back. And to show how far these people have went in their kufr and the actual self-obsession, to believe that there's no Lord other than you. It's okay when you're faking it, at least it's understandable, but when you genuinely believe it, it shows a whole different level of kufr. And you will see to what extent some of these people are willing to go just to protect that and preserve that image. He said to him, yes, there's a Lord other than me. And then they beat him up and they said to him, who was this Lord? How did you get in touch with this Lord? How did this Lord return to you? He said, the boy. They bought the boy, and the boy by now has been trained by the magician for years. They bought the boy, and the king knew to play it smarter than lose the boy. So he said to him, he said, look, we've trained you, we've given you this, we've given you this. We brought you out of your family in the village to our palace for you to get a status. So, and you think there's a Lord worthy of worship except me? And this is the exact same thing that Fir'aun did to Musa alayhi salam. When he first came to him in the palace to give him advice, he said, Alam nurabbika fina walida. Didn't we raise you when you were a child? We raised you. And walabitta fina min umrika sinin. You lived in our house, in our palace, here for years. So over time, at that instant, the boy was beaten. The boy was told, how did you know about this Lord? We're supposed to raise you. You're supposed to be the next generation of this. You're supposed to be the magician that takes on. So he said to him, how did you know about this Lord? Over time the boy gave up and he told them about the monk. They came and captured the monk and they beat the monk up, and they said to him, look, you turn back from your religion or we'll kill you. He said, I'm not turning back from my religion. And they started with what they presumed to be the weakest link, which is the most recent believer, and that's the advisor of the king. They started beating him up and they said, turn back from your religion. He said, I'm not going to turn back from my religion. So they bought the sword that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about, they put it on his head and they split his body into two, and he refused to turn back from his religion. And then they came to the monk, and the monk, as you see, was scared initially when he told the boy, you're going to be tested, so if you are tested, don't give my name. He was scared. He didn't want to be captured. He didn't want to be prosecuted. So you would assume that if he's scared of capture and prosecution, he would give in. But no. He didn't hesitate. Turn back from your religion. I won't turn back from my religion. They brought the sword on top of his head. They sewn his body into two parts, and he didn't turn back from his religion at all. And now in this, you see that the Prophet ﷺ set a principle that as a Muslim, you do not wish to face difficulty. You don't make dua to face difficulty. You don't make dua that Allah Azza wa Jal strikes you with a calamity. And even some people go on to wishfully think that, oh, I wish I could face the Dajjal, because if the Dajjal throws me into his fire, I'm going to enter Jannah. And it's a genuine belief amongst people. And the Prophet ﷺ sets the opposite, that if you are able to avoid a test, if you are able to avoid a calamity, you avoid it by any means necessary. But even war, even battle, the Prophet ﷺ never intentionally sought after battle. Even when he built his army up, he didn't go out of his way to pick battles with whoever faced him. The Prophet ﷺ tried to, as much as possible, reserve and avoid confrontation and avoid calamities and avoid problems and avoid issues. And the Prophet ﷺ taught us all that. So if, for example, when the plague hit Sham and Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah radiallahu anhu was there, and Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, who was the Khalifa at that time and was a very close friend of Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah was his army leader. When he told Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, he said, come back, avoid the plague. He said, no, I heard the Prophet ﷺ say to what the meaning of is that do not go out of your way to, into a disease, into a plague. However, if you are struck by it, do not run away from it. And this is what the monk did. He didn't want to. He didn't want to go out of his way to start confrontations, because he knew he didn't have the appetite for it, he didn't have the ability. But when confrontations came his way, he didn't stand down and run away from his religion. He stood firm to his religion. And then came the turn of the boy. The boy now has seen two of his companions get killed, two of his older companions get killed, his teacher, the monk, get killed. And his option was, either turn back from your religion or we'll kill you as well. And the king didn't want to kill him, because he knew he's trained him, he spent too much into him, he's worth something to him. He didn't want to kill him, so he said to a group of his men, take him up to the top of a mountain and ask him, turn back from your religion. If he turns back from his religion, return him, bring him back. If he doesn't turn back from his religion, throw him. He went up to the top of his mountain, or he went up to the top of the mountain, and when he got to the top, to the peak, before they threw him, he asked Allah Azza wa Jalla, he said, Allahumma kfinihim bima shi'ta. Oh Allah, help me, grant me refuge from them with whatever means possible, whichever way you can. The mountain was shaking, all of them fell, except the boy, and the boy came back. Now, for someone hearing this story, and as I said, people generally do have doubts in Islam, someone might turn around and be like, you're trying to tell me a whole mountain was shaken and the boy didn't fall and the rest of the people fell. It's a genuine thing that people get targeted through, okay, this story doesn't make sense, that story doesn't make sense. And as Muslims, it's something that maybe not you, maybe your siblings might come and ask these questions. This story doesn't add up. The Prophet ﷺ was on the mountain of Uhud. The mountain was shaken, and the Prophet ﷺ said to Uhud, stand firm. On top of you is a Prophet, a Siddiq, and two martyrs. And Uhud stood firm. Are you trying to tell me a mountain understands? It has this. And we as Muslims know that this is the certain element of faith that once you reach, it doesn't matter what someone wants to say. Someone that believes the whole universe can come around by choice or by chance wants to tell you that a mountain cannot shake and one person stands firm on it. We believe that when Allah Azza wa Jalla enables something to happen, it will happen. Kun fayakun, be and it is. And it's important for us to understand this as a concept, as a whole, regardless of you know what, this might not be true, this hadith, and especially at a time where we're generally challenged over, almost all of us, by knowledge. We feel like there's a need, I have to understand something. If it makes sense to me, then it has to be true. If it doesn't make sense to me, then it can't be true. And as a principle, these stories are stories that Allah Azza wa Jal narrated, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam narrated, that if someone comes and challenges it logically and you don't feel like you have the answers, then go ask someone that's a bit more qualified. However, the bottom line is, if Allah Azza wa Jal says it happened, it happened. If the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says it happened, it happened. And you see this belief with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, when someone said to him, your messenger said he traveled all the way to Jerusalem and back in the night, a journey that usually takes weeks. He said to him, if he said it happened, then it happened. It's not a negotiable thing. And this is how we should be with our religion. If it's in a hadith, if it's in the Quran, non-negotiable. And the boy came back to the king. And we look at this instance, how sincere he was to Allah Azza wa Jal. He, at a certain point where he could have said, I turn back from my religion, they would have taken him back, even though he believes. He may still believe in his heart, and the Prophet ﷺ made it permissible for the companions, if they feel like they're challenged and they're beaten, that they can turn back from Islam just by tongue. Just say, I've left Islam, but don't mean it in your heart, as long as your heart is not comfortable with it. Yet, this boy didn't want to do that. He asked Allah Azza wa Jal, he turned sincerely to Allah Azza wa Jal, and this is when the Prophet ﷺ, when he speaks about dua, he says, ask Allah Azza wa Jal, make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal, wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba, and that you are firm that Allah Azza wa Jal is going to answer your dua. You have no doubt that Allah Azza wa Jal is going to answer dua. The boy goes back to the king. The king says to him, where are the soldiers, where are the people that I've sent with you? He said, Allah Azza wa Jal took care of them. So he sent another group. He said, take a boat, take him into the middle of the water, ask him to turn back from his religion. If he turns back from his religion, bring him back. If he doesn't, throw him in the water. The same thing happened. They were on the boat in the middle of the water. They said, turn back from your religion. He said, Allahumma kfinihim bima shi'ta. Oh Allah, protect me from them whichever way you want to. The boat was shaking, the waves hit, everyone fell off the boat except him. He made it back. He came back to the king. He said to him, the king asked him, he said, how are you back? Where are the soldiers? He said, Allah Azza wa Jal took care of them. And then the king was at a point where he sent soldiers that outnumber him, that are bigger than him, just to try to get rid of him, and they haven't been able to. The boy said to him, I have a solution for you. If you want to kill me, then call everyone out and hang me on a cross and take out one of my arrows and say, Bismillahi Rabbi hadha al-ghulam, and aim. The king called everyone, and by now this is the talk of the town. They've heard about this, they've seen certain aspects, they've seen the boy kill the beast, they've seen the boy cure some of the people of the locality. So for them it was a big thing, that the boy was going to be killed. The people came in their numbers and to witness this event, and the king came and he pulled out the arrow, he put it in the bow, and he pulled it out and he said, in the name of Allah, the Lord of this kid. And he fired, and he hit the kid right through here, and he killed him. The king, his main thing was to hold on to his power whichever way it meant. If it meant saying that and killing the boy, so be it. In that, he was blindsided to the fact that every single person that he's ever lived with, his kingdom was all there witnessing him call upon someone other than himself. If you were truly a lord or a king or the Almighty, would you call on someone other than yourself? It wouldn't make sense. But in that short sort of blindsided state of his, he said that statement, and every single person that was there unanimously said, we believe in the Lord of the boy. Regardless of what the state of that was before, if you saw the king as your lord or not, if you see him call on to someone other than him, then surely you would respect that lord more. It's as if you go into a doctor and the doctor says, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to ask a more senior doctor, and then the doctor comes back giving you his opinion. You're not interested, you're more interested in what the senior doctor thinks. And Allah Azza wa Lillahi al-mathal al-a'la, and Allah Azza wa Jalla is a greater example, that when you see someone calling on someone more mighty, then automatically the might is to the one that's being called upon. So once he killed him, everyone unanimously said, Amanna bi Rabbil Ghulam. We believe in the Lord of the boy. The king now has lost control of all of them. So he asked the people to dig ditches or trenches all around the city, and he lit fires between them, and he would bring people. He'd bring them to the edge of it and say, turn back on your religion. And they'd be like, we won't turn back. They will throw them into the fire. He said, turn back onto your religion. They won't throw them back. Until eventually, everyone in the city was thrown into a ditch. And from the people that the Prophet ﷺ mentions, a lady came with her son, and a young son, and he was brought onto the edge, and the lady was hesitant. Someone that she's carried for 9 months, someone that she's just in the start of the process of raising. She was too scared to let go of that. So she was hesitant. She was told, turn back from your religion. She was considering. And the boy spoke for the first time. He said, oh my mom, be patient. Verily you are on the truth. And on that the story ends, from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And then, if we want to look further into the story, we see Allah Azza wa Jal picks up the story from that same instance, from that same, a continuation from there, and Allah Azza wa Jal speaks about it in Surah Buruj, a surah that we all know, a surah that we may have all read. Allah Azza wa Jal starts by swearing, by making a qasam, as He does in many of the surahs. In Juz' Amma, Allah Azza wa Jal swears by the skies, by the heavens, and the stars that are contained in the heavens. وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الْبُرُوجِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْمَوْعُودِ. And then Allah Azza wa Jal swears by the day, the promised day, the day of judgment. And then Allah Azza wa Jal swears by the witness and whatever's been witnessed upon. And some have said that the witness is the Prophet ﷺ, and what's being witnessed upon is his ummah. Others have said Allah Azza wa Jal left it as a general testament to anything that's being witnessed upon, to show the importance of witnessing, to show that how noble and sacred of an act it is, and protected of an act it is, that Allah Azza wa Jal swears by witnessing. And then Allah Azza wa Jal says, قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ. The people of the trench were killed. And Allah Azza wa Jal says, النَّارِ ذَاتُ الْوَقُودِ إِذْهُمْ عَلَيْهَا قُعُودٌ. A fire that was fueling, and they were sitting near it. وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ. And these people were witnessing what they were doing to the believers. And all they had an issue with, وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ. All they resented from them was that they believed in Allah Azza wa Jal, the exalted in might, the praiseworthy. الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. To whom Allah Azza wa Jal belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and Allah Azza wa Jal is a witness above everything. This story starts by a single believer. A single believer that in a city and an area that was all lost and was believing in other than Allah Azza wa Jal, he stood firm to his principle. And that's the monk. He wasn't influenced by society. He wasn't influenced by what was happening around him. It didn't interest him how people turned away from the religion of Allah Azza wa Jal. He stood firm and he believed, and he was the one single believer. And this believer was followed by one more person, and it was the boy. And you see the difference between the monk and the boy. The boy was a young individual. He wasn't learned. The monk was learned. He didn't know much. The monk knew. The contrast between them, the boy was out there, he was in the circle of the king, while as the monk wasn't known, he was hiding in his cave. And to show that Allah Azza wa Jal supports this religion with different people. It could be a boy, it could be an old man, it could be a young man. It doesn't matter who the person is. When Allah Azza wa Jal wants to support this religion, Allah Azza wa Jal will send someone to support this religion. Allah Azza wa Jal will send someone, and through that someone, the one boy who made the ultimate sacrifice, a whole nation accepted Islam. In this story, some of the lessons of the story can be derived and are focused on the importance of education, the importance of learning, the importance of learning at a young age. You look at the boy, when he was chosen, when the sorcerer, the magician said, I'm going to die soon, choose me someone young, someone with a fresh mind, someone that can understand, someone can still learn. Even though he probably would have been able to find established magicians out there, but it's much easier for someone to learn at a young age. I'm not saying you all are not young in that, but at a much younger age. This boy was reported to be 8 years old. Why is this important? Many of us are at a point of our life where we may have passed that, where we've got a lot of free time, we have a lot of time to learn. However, we have siblings that haven't. Some will get married in the near future, and inshallah will have kids. And that time for many of us, if we continue the cycle of us growing up, and for some of us that are first generation sort of immigrants into this country, it wasn't as easy upbringing, being raised by someone or your parents not understanding a system and culture that clash. But for us, we are a lot more established into the system. A lot of us have grown up and have studied and have lived all of our life, our best parts of our life in this country. The responsibility comes upon the generations of Muslims that comes after us is how they are raised. What difference will they make? What the kids of the Muslims that are yet to come will make. The first, the second, the third generation of Muslims. It's either a matter of we could lose all of our religion, our identity as Muslims, or Islam could become a pillar of this community or of this society. Islam could become a focus, not just in the UK, but in the West as a whole. And it's decided by how we, as individuals, raise our next generation. Whether it's siblings or whether it's our kids and so on and so forth. The boy, his sacrifice was that he gave his life. The monk's sacrifice was that he gave his time. He was worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal. He was giving up a lot of his time to preach to whoever he had access to, such as the boy and so on and so forth. And each one has an opportunity to make a sacrifice. Everyone here does have an element of either it's free time, a skill, a tool that they can give the Muslim community, or they could speak on behalf of a community. Everyone has a skill, whether it's they're speakers, they're good speakers, or they're just talented, they can establish sort of networks, whether it's poster making, whether it's being able to actually run workshops and help people, whether it's a simple thing as being able to manage an organization or being able to manage a community initiative, and so on and so forth. Every single person here has an opportunity, and now is the time to act upon whatever we've learned. If you look at yourself 20 years from now and you turn around and be like, I've went through university and I've worked my 9 to 5, and 20 years later you're still working your 9 to 5 just paying bills, and you've not left behind you any sadaqah jariyah, and you've not established any seeds for the Muslim community in the UK, then I'm just gonna leave it there, innit? You wig yourself. Like genuinely, you could have done. We can do a lot. We have an opportunity, and Muslims here are reliant on people that are educated. Many of the first generation Muslims took up jobs like taxi drivers, construction workers, whatever means necessary just to establish their name. Some have made it, and mashallah, like property, doctors and so on and so forth, but majority haven't made it into that field. And now it's what our expertise going to actually provide for us, not financially, but when we face Allah Azza wa Jal. What's that doctor title going to mean when you face Allah Azza wa Jal? What's you yourself as an individual or teacher that works in a school, what else have you given to the Muslim community? Or someone that your parents worked so hard for you to memorize the Quran. Your parents worked so hard for you to learn Arabic. Your parents worked, whatever it is, your parents have given their time and dedicated something for you to be raised, educated Islamically and academically educated. What are you going to give? And that's a question that you're not going to answer to yourself or to me, to anyone sitting here. You're going to answer in front of Allah Azza wa Jal. The last thing and the last lesson I wanted to conclude with is that this boy didn't have any element of support. Any element of support. His parents just sent him to a magician so he can learn and make something out of himself. His parents didn't really care much if they sent him to a magician. He didn't have someone before him that had established this da'wah. He didn't have anyone to look up to. He was on his own. It was a blank canvas for him. He wasn't someone that was established in the community. He was a young boy. But he was someone that was dedicated. He was someone that when presented with an opportunity to run away after he was left on the mountain on his own and Allah Azza wa Jal helped him in that instance, he could have just left. He didn't need to turn back. However, his dedication, his belief in that cause showed that this boy wasn't someone that was willing to give up easily. He came back, and he came back a third time and eventually gave his life for it and sacrificed his life for it. And then this same boy, when we look at him, we look at a boy that over time didn't have anything, any sort of knowledge. And once he dedicated himself to his teacher, the monk, he just kept coming back and back and back in the morning, on his way back from work, on his way back to his family house, to show that there's no excuse. If you want to learn Islam, if you want to learn Quran, if you want to make something out of yourself outside your academic, 9 to 5 is not going to stop you. You're the one that's going to put a barrier between yourself and learning and taking the next step. This boy found a way to work in the palace, in the actual enemy's backyard, and balance it with going home to his family and without either of them knowing what's happening. And the last lesson we learn from the monk is his humility with the boy. Once the boy came back to him and told him the story about the beast, he didn't say, "Who do you think you are doing that? I taught you. Did you tell the people it was me that taught you? Did you tell the people that, did you give me credit? Do people know that I'm the one that built that? Do people know that I'm the one that told you about Allah Azza wa Jal?" There was absolute sincerity. He acknowledged that this boy today becomes better than him, and it's very difficult for any of us to acknowledge anyone's better at anything. However, this is his teacher acknowledging that he's become better than him. That same humility was shown and sincerity was shown by the boy when the king and the minister of the king came to him and asked him. He said to him, "Cure me." He said, "I do not cure anyone." It could have been a young boy that got carried away and said, "Yeah, the magician's curing people, I'm curing people, I'm the means of curing. The monk isn't able to cure people. This aide of the king has been looking around for someone to restore his eyesight for years. I was the one that came and did it." That didn't carry, he wasn't carried away by that. He understood and he stood firmly, and that sometimes is a lesson and a reminder for a lot of us that people that are involved in the ISOC, you may pull an event or you may do something and you think, you know what, I've smashed it out of the park here. I've genuinely outdone myself. Like, I'm going to give myself a round of applause. However, it comes to a point where you know that at the end of the day, whatever you do is for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. You could come and the very smallest of action could weigh so heavy on the scales, and the greatest of actions could come very light on the scales just because of your sincerity and the way you approach it. So it's an important reminder, and with that inshallah we'll conclude that. أقول قولي هذا جزاكم الله خير. هذا والله أعلى وأعلم ونسبة العلم به أسلم. السلام عليكم.